evening, my little guzzlers. Tonight, we're going sexy, we're going seductive, we're going sensual. Not that it isn't always like that, but this is a special little dish tonight. This comes from Nigella, and she herself describes this as a lovely, sensual dish. So tonight we're going to make saffron scented chicken pilaf. So I have an array of exotic ingredients ready to combine. So let's get started. So first off, we're going to get our hands on some nice breast. And what we're going to do with that breast is we're going to cut it into chunks and place it sensuously into that bowl, where we will then caress it with a nice marinade. The quantity we're making tonight, about 300 grams. But as much as you can never get enough breast. Now, we're now going to sprinkle it with some freshly ground, it is fresh ground, I did it earlier, freshly ground cinnamon, about 1/4 teaspoon. And then I've got 100 grams of Greek yogurt, not just ordinary yogurt, but Greek. Just imagine sitting there on the sand, in the sun, in Greece, being waited on with ice cold Retsina. And if you don't like Retsina, whatever you like. So we're then going to dot up that yogurt. But that's not all we're going to do with it. We're going to dollop that on there for now. And then we're going to take half a lemon. And we're going to squeeze it so the juice flows through our fingers. That's strap the pick. There you go, there's a pick. And then we must ensure that all those bits of breast are thoroughly coated. We're going to caress it. But of course, one should always take precautions. So I'm just going to slip on a glove. Ooh. All this sensuality is making me thirsty. And now I'm going to caress it. Ensuring that cinnamon, that Greek yogurt, the lemon juice caresses every piece. Ooh, can you hear that? And now we're just going to set it aside and we're going to go and relax with our glass of wine. Hour. So we're almost ready to start cooking the chicken. But before, just need to prepare some stock. So in here, I've got 500 mils of chicken stock, but we wanted a little bit more special than just chicken stock. So what I have here is half a teaspoon of saffron bits, and we're going to sprinkle these into that stock and let that sensual saffron infuse through the stock. And just chucker it to one side. Oh, it reminds me the wine's empty. Now, to get cooking the chicken. Now you can do this two ways. You can have 2 pans, and you can eventually have 3, but I'm not. So I'm going to take the pan that I'm going to be cooking the final pilaf in, and I'm going to cook in that my chicken, and then I'm going to sort of clean it out, and we'll do the pilaf. So let me just get myself a little knife. So in my pan, I'm going to take a nice generous knob of butter. Where's my oil one? And then we're using some sunflower oil. If you're Nigella, ground nut oil. Don't have any. Generous glug of sesame oil, vegetable oil. Preferably not olive oil, because we don't want the sensuality of this saffron scented sport by the olive. So we're going to put that in there, and then I'm going to turn that up when it goes to play ball. And when that butter is melted into the oil, almost an olive oil, we're then in batches going to toss the chicken, the marinated chicken, into there and cook it off. Now, as young Nigella, I say young, same age as me, as Nigella would say, we don't wish the chicken to stew in its own juices. We want to nicely colour it. And then we're going to chuck it in a bowl, keep it warm, put it one side so we can do the rest of the pilaf. So we'll just let the oil and butter mix. So move your chicken pan to the back burner so you get more heat in it. You can start bronzing it better. That's all. So, as I said, this is a Nigella recipe, and as she describes it, it's got a cinnamon and lemony yogurt marinade, which gives the chicken a soft, perfumed tenderness. The saffron, infused rice, studded with nuts, which you haven't come across yet. We're doing them later in a bit. Hang on, let me just have a little toss. Got to keep tossing my breasts. Got to make sure they're all nicely bronzed all over. It will have the musty scent of cardamom. Again, you haven't seen that yet. And we will be finishing it by lighting it with gold. Ooh. Very sexy. And as she says, when you serve this to your guests, just me and the wife or not, your guests will wish to strew rose petals in your path. She went on to say something about she'd be dressing in her silken whatever when she sits down to eat it. So, my chicken's almost there. So, I'm just going to remove that, bring it back onto the small burner, because we're going to need lower heat. The stock is nicely infused. Save my inside. So, I'm not going to empty my pan. It's got a nice golden, well, it's a bit brown really, a golden oily marinade left in there. So I'm going to add another little knob of butter. Yep, don't you dare fall off. And then I'm going to give it another little glug of oil. And we're just going to put that on a heat to melt that fresh butter. And while it's doing that, don't think you've escaped, because here comes the lecture. What's a pilaf? So a pilaf is a rice dish, although in some regions it's often made from buckwheat. Okay, and it normally involves cooking the rice or wheat in a stock or broth, and then add in spices, which is what we're doing, and other ingredients such as vegetables, meat, that's what we're doing, and then the way it's cooked, the pilaf, the grains separate, don't go mushy. It's not all right, we're not making a rice pudding, right? Right, so that butter is now melted. So in here, I've got 250 grams of basmati rice. Or a little top tip for you in a second. So, we're going to tip the rice in there, turn down the heat, and we're now just going to gently press those grains with the oil until they're nice and glossy, or in this case, glossy and a bit brown. Now, what else you're going to need to go in here? I've got about 4 or 5 cardamom pods, green cardamom pods. I've got the other half of the lemon. I've got some lemon zest. Oh, that's it. Oh, and my stock, obviously, with my saffron in. So I'm just going to let this rice warm through a little bit more, and we'll move on to the next bit. Nicely glossy. I'm going to put in my cardamom pods. I'm going to squeeze in half of that lemon juice. Ooh. Ooh. Do I make you horny, baby? Watching that Austin Powers last night. First one. And then we've got that zest, in that goes. And then finally, the stock with the saffron. And we're going to give it a little caress together. And then we're going to turn up the heat a little bit, and we want to bring it to the boil. At which point we turn the heat right down low, and we're then just going to let it cook for about 10 minutes or so until it's all cooked through. So, our pilaf. What I'll make that cut ball, a bit moistury, listen. Don't get this with Nigella, I tell you. You just get the sexy bits. So, this way of cooking rice spread throughout India, well, from India to Spain and eventually the wider world. The Spanish paella, I don't know how you pronounce that, and the South African pilau, sorry, South Asian, not South Africa, South Asian pilau and the biryani also evolved from this. Now the English word pilaf actually derives from the Turkish word pilav, which actually derived from the Persian word pilav, just spelled a bit differently. So that's where the word pilaf came from. Now in the 4th century BC, or I suppose if you want to be, I don't know, politically correct or whatever you call it, BCE, Alexander the Great was apparently so impressed with the Bactrian and the Sogdian, that don't sound very appetising, it's Sogdian pilavs, that his soldiers had found sort of recipes for and were cooking from Macedonia, that he brought all these recipes back with him. So Alexander the Great liked it. He liked a nice pilaf. The earliest recorded, documented pilaf recipe comes from the 10th century. Okay. Don't know if it was a bit sexy then or not. But the 10th century, the Persian scholar Avicenna, Avicini, I don't know how you pronounce it, he wrote a book on medical sciences, which involved various foods and things that you should eat taking a long time to come out the boil this. It's because it's on this front burner, see, which is only small. Big pan, small burner. And he dedicated a whole section to certain types of foods and dishes. All revolving around the pilaf. Now, he said, this is where it gets a bit sexy, I suppose. He said, oh, by the way, the Persians saw him as like the godfather of the pilaf. But he described it as the grains should be plump and firm, to resemble peppercorns, but no mushiness. We don't want mushiness. Sexiness is alright, don't want to go mushy, right? And each grain should be separate without clumping. There you go, there's your history lesson all done with. So, this is just about come up to the boil, so what I'm going to do is turn the heat down low, and like I say, we're then going to put that on for about 10 to 15 minutes. Now, our final thing we've got to do is get our hands on some nuts. Now, before I cook the nuts, what I've got here is some fresh parsley, and I'm just going to take some of that, and if I was Jamie, I wouldn't be using a knife. Jamie would say, don't use a knife to chop your herbs or whatever with. He would say, rip it into pieces. Well, I want it a little bit more smaller than that. So I'm just chopping up the parsley, and then I've got a selection of nuts. So I've got 4 tablespoons of pistachio nuts, shelled, unsalted or whatever. And then I've got some cashew nuts, about 30 grams. I've got some flaked almonds, about 30 grams. And I've got some pine nuts. Pine nuts, I've got about 25 grams. Now, I'm not doing anything with the pistachios at the moment. But what we're going to do, we're going to dry roast. Now, I've got to keep the eye on the rice, because I put in my back burner, because I need my front burner to do my nuts. So, I'm just going to wash my hands off. My parsley's sort of done. I've got a pan, dry pan. We're not putting any oil or anything like that in it. We're going to dry roast. Oh, there's a novelty, dry roasted nuts. We're going to dry roast the nuts, but like I say, we are not dry roasting the pistachios. So, I've got my little pan, and I'm going to put it on a medium heat, and then into that I'm going to put the cashews, flaked almonds, and the pine nuts. Like I say, we're not doing that with the pistachios. They will be going in naked. So, my rice is getting there. Probably better in a saucepan, because I can toss it a bit about. So all we want to do is, as Nigella would say, I just want to gently warm my nuts, so as they release the aroma and oils. We don't want to burn them. We're not trying to cook our nuts. Bad for you. You have to watch the temperature of your nuts. You can overcook them very easily. And then once they've done that, we're just going to take them off and put them on one side. I've got my parsley chopped, got my chicken cooked, my rice is almost done. Now, if it turns out that your rice absorbs all that stock and it's not really cooked, add a bit more boiling water. Okay, but obviously we want it dry. We don't want it swimming in the rice soup. Funny that, I came across a recipe for a rice soup. It's what was served to the third class passengers on the Titanic. I've got that one courtesy of Max. Taste and History. I always thought they never knew what the third class passengers ate, but apparently they did, they had a menu. So one of my early videos, one of my very, very early videos, I mistakenly said, no one knows what the third class ate. Complete crap. They did. They had a menu. They might have been third class, but they weren't like poor destitute. They can afford a ticket on Titanic. Right, so we're not far off putting together our sensual saffron scented chicken pilaf. My rice is cooked. I've removed it off that burner. I've just put a lid on to keep it sort of covered over at the moment. My nuts are nicely roasted. Be careful, the smaller nuts like the pine nuts and the flaked almonds will catch a bit quicker than the others. And then what we're going to do, I'm going to remove the lid from that. We're going to tip those nuts, whoop, get them on the floor, chuck them over there. I'm going to take my chicken, and in that goes. And then I'm going to take my chopped parsley, and in that goes. And now all I'm going to do is toss that all together, and then we'll serve it on the plate and add the finishing touches. It's going to get sexy. What we're going to do is we're going to start serving up this sensual delight. So just for tasting purposes, I'll put a little piece on there, and I'm going to sprinkle on some of those pistachios. Now, as old Nigella said about gold, what we're going to do is we're going to spritz it up with a little bit of gold. You probably can't appreciate that on there, but it's got a nice little golden sheen. So let's taste this sensual delight. Lovely moist chicken. Rice with a little bit of nuttiness to the grain and including nuts. That was, excuse me. Well done, Nigella. Perfect, sensual, sexy, saffron scented chicken pilaf.